I built this little Raspberry Pi powered Game Boy Pocket way back in 2021, and despite its tiny size and limited power, it's still one of my favourite handhelds to game on. If I were to do this again, I would use a Raspberry Pi 02 instead of the Compute Module 3 because the SODIMM connector for the Compute Module is a nightmare to solder, and I'd also be looking for a better display to pair with. But that isn't the topic of today's video, the housing is. This was one of the first acrylic housings I made, and although it has held up really well, I just tapped threads straight into the acrylic rather than using the threaded inserts that I use on all of my current projects. Because of this, a lot of the screws are starting to come loose, and there's not much I can do to fix them without replacing the housing. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And what better way to do it than to test out the capabilities of Makera's little Carvera Air CNC machine. Outside of YouTube, I've been involved in the design and manufacture of industrial CNC machinery for the better part of the last 15 years. And I've even built my own similar little desktop CNC, so it will be interesting to compare the results and see how this machine stacks up. Since I've done so much work with acrylic on this channel already, I think it's time we changed it up a bit, so I'm going to have a go with some wood instead. I was originally hoping to find something with a bit more interesting grain to it, but with the crazy month I've just had, I simply ran out of time to track something down, so I picked up this bit of Tasmanian oak from my local Bunnings, which I think should work nicely. Tasmanian oak is a hardwood, but it's definitely on the softer end of the hardwood spectrum, so this little machine should have no trouble carving through it. As anyone who's done CNC work can attest, the most important part of the job is the setup. So let's take a look at our options and see what we can come up with. The Carvera Air has a couple of different options for locating our job. They have two predefined reference points on the bed where you can affix one of these corner stops. They are machined with dowel points and they provide some dowel pins, so their positioning should be pretty repeatable. There's also a probe for setting the height of our stock along with a manual edge finder block, which I'll run you through later. The predefined origins are probably accurate enough for most simple jobs, but since these parts are multi-sided, our alignment and our origin point needs to be precisely set, so I'm going to use the manual edge finder instead. Since this manual edge finder only works in the bottom left corner of the job, to stand a chance of getting both sides of this job to line up, I need a precisely sized piece of stock to start with. To do that, I'm going to use the machine itself to cut the stock for us. The first step is to cut off a section of wood that is big enough to cut our finished stock size from. Since we're going to be cutting right around the outside of the block, the best way to hold it down that I could come up with was to use the tape and glue method. I applied masking tape to the bottom of the stock along with a bit of scrap polycarbonate I had here. Then I apply some super glue to the tape and then glue the two layers together. Once the glue is set, we can hold the polycarb down using these little clamps, and I'll just roughly align the stock to the front of the bed with a ruler. Now let's set our origin using the manual edge finder. It connects up to the tool head where the probe is normally connected. Next, I'll load up this blank tool into the spindle and I'll connect the magnet to the spindle. Now we just need to position the tool roughly over the manual edge finder and hit go. With that procedure complete, we should have an accurate origin point to start the job. I have Auto Z probe and scan margin enabled, so when I hit start, the first thing the machine will do is ask me to insert the probe. It then height senses the probe before using its built-in laser pointer to trace an outline of where the job will end up on the stock. Then, it probes the surface of the stock and returns back to the corner and asks for the first tool. For this job, I'm using a 3.175mm diameter, 25mm long single flute end mill. So I'll load that into the machine and hit confirm. And that's all there is to it. The machine is now going to cut out our stock and leave me with a perfectly sized and square block that we can now begin the real project with. I'm going to use this thin corner locator to ensure the stock is square to the machine, but I'll still use the manual edge finder to set the origin rather than relying on the predefined reference point in this corner. I'm going to use these little clamps to hold the material down this time, as they should be perfect for this job while the stock is still solid. Let's start with the front half of the housing. I'm going to machine the inside first since it requires an awful lot more material removal than the outside does. Starting the job is exactly the same as we did for the stock. The probe touches off the top of the stock and then we switch over to the first tool, which is the same 3.175mm end mill we just used. This part of the job took about an hour at a feed rate of 1000mm per minute. The only tool changes that were required were for the locating cutouts around the buttons and the chamfer around the outside edge. Now it's time to flip it over and do the outside. The clamps won't work so well on this side as the area they are pushing on is flexible now. So I 3D printed this insert that will fit snugly into the bottom of the timber, allowing me to safely clamp the job in place. I used the manual edge finder again to set the corner and then got the job started with 3.175mm end mill. Now that the initial roughing is done, we can see it really starting to take shape. Next, I'll swap in the 3.175mm ball nose cutter to create the nice, smooth, curved surface we all know and love. Next, we'll drill the speaker holes with a 1.5mm drill and then finally cut around the outside with the end mill again. I didn't catch it on camera, but the tabs I left to keep the part secure weren't strong enough and the part flicked out of the stock. Luckily, the only damage is a little crack up the top, which I'll just put a dab of super glue on to fix it. We still need to put the Nintendo logo on the front of the housing, and now that it's fallen out of the stock, I think we'd be better off putting it on in a method that doesn't put much pressure on the already thin wood. Luckily, this machine came with a diode laser attachment, so let's have a go at etching the logo instead. Up until now, I've done all of my cam in Fusion, but since the laser is a bit different, it's probably easier if I jump over to Makera's own cam solution for the laser etching. I simply exported a top-down view of the housing from Fusion and imported it into Makera Cam. I used the move command to position the drawing at the origin point, and then I selected the logo and used the laser 2D vector toolpath type. I've never run a diode laser before, so I referred to Makera's wiki for feeds and speeds for the laser. It suggests 500mm a minute at 40% power for hardwood, so that sounds like a good enough starting point to me. We'll use the probe first again to set the height of the job, and then I'll load up the laser module. It just fits in the end of the spindle like a regular tool, and it connects up to this plug. There is a little laser eye guard, which is a good idea to fit if you can, but since this engraving isn't on a nice flat bit of material, I'm gonna leave it off just in case it hits. There is also an air assist for the laser, which apparently helps make the cut cleaner, but I'm running this job late at night, and I don't think my neighbours would appreciate the sound of my air compressor running right now, so we're gonna go without the air. Looks like the settings were spot on for this job, and just like that, the front of the housing is complete. We can check to see how our alignment went by measuring the thickness of the side walls and comparing them. There's only a minute difference between the sides in this axis, and even less in the other. To get this close, that means that the scaling on the machine must be pretty much bang on, as if our stock block wasn't the correct size, we wouldn't have got a result close to this good, and the manual edge finder is pretty good too. Now, let's get started on the back half of the housing. The process is going to be pretty much the same as the front of the housing. We'll start with a block that's been cut down to size by the machine so that we know exactly what we're dealing with. I'll start on the outside of this one because the finish on the large flat area will be better without the back of the housing being hollow. All of the roughing is done by the same 3.175mm end mill, and then we can begin finishing the radiused areas with the ball nose tool. Then we just drill the holes out to 2mm and finish everything off by cutting around the outside of the housing. I made another printed insert for this one so we can clamp against the edges reliably when we flip the job over, so I'll stick that in there now. I've been using a couple of drops of super glue around the edge of the printed piece to ensure it stays in place. This is only in contact with the stock, not the finished part, so it shouldn't cause us any problems. I have also put some masking tape on the print and the flat section of the back of the housing and applied a bit more glue there to hopefully hold the housing in place so it can't jump out like the last one did. With the stock clamped back down, we can get started on the inside of the rear housing. I'm sure you guys know the drill by now. Roughing with the 3.175mm end mill, followed by finishing with the ball nose. And before you know it, we have a complete housing. There's one step left though. I need to make some holes in the top for the power and volume buttons. Instead of trying to set this up again on the CNC, I've just printed a jig so I can drill these holes by hand with my cordless drill. I'll put a drop of glue on each threaded insert before I install them to ensure they stay in place, and then I'll finish these bits off with some spray varnish to protect the timber. Before we start assembly, there's one more thing I want to try. I've got this brass hex bar here that is just big enough to make some buttons out of, and that will give us a good opportunity to try out the 4th axis accessory on the Carvera Air. The first problem I had is that you can't properly hold a hex bar in this type of 4-jaw chuck, so I 3D printed some soft jaws so that I have something that I can grab onto with the chuck. These are 100% infill, so we should be able to crank the chuck up nice and tight without squashing them. The 4th axis has its own dedicated reference point, so I'll select that one now, and then I'll position the X-axis 0 point just far enough along so that the tool can't touch the chuck. I've completely removed the tailstock for this job because it's short enough that it should be stable without it, and this just gives me one less thing to risk running into. The D-pad I used on this design is a direct copy of the Switchlight D-pad, so it has a little post that stands out from the bottom that's used for the pivot, so we'll start on that side. I'm using a shorter 3.175mm end mill for all of the roughing on this part, then I'm going to swap over to a 2mm end mill to make a bit of a rebate in the back of the D-pad where it doesn't contact the buttons, because I'm a bit worried about the weight of these being an issue. Once that's done, we can swap back to the 3.175mm end mill, and the 4th axis will rotate our part 180 degrees so that we can continue from the top side. There's a bunch more roughing on this side, but once that's done, we can swap over to the ball nose to finish off the top side of the D-pad. There's only a few steps left now, and first we need to engrave the arrows onto the D-pad with the little V-bit cutter. Next, I'll swap back to the 2mm end mill to finish off the corners and the tapered outside edge, and then finally, we can cut it out with the 3.175mm end mill. I've left a little tab where it connects to the stock that we can snap off and file down, and just like that, we have a brass D-pad. I was originally going to do this for all the buttons, but after feeling how heavy this feels, even with the rebate on the back, I think I'll stick with my original plastic buttons to ensure the controls still feel snappy. All that's left now is to assemble it. The screen surround is just a bit of laser printed paper, so it sits in here first, followed by the acrylic. Next, we can install the buttons, and then the PCB just bolts in from behind. The battery gets stuck to the inside of the back cover with a bit of double-sided tape, and that's it, all done. Overall, I'm quite impressed with the Carvera Air. The machine itself is very quiet as far as CNC machines go, and the cover does a great job of keeping the cutting noise and dust inside, meaning you could easily get away with running this in an office if you wanted to. The software is pretty easy to use, and being able to change tools this easily is a huge win compared to the lengthy manual process I have to go through with my little machine. This machine is surprisingly solid, so it should have no trouble tackling some harder materials too. While the advertised spindle wattage of just 200 watts seemed low compared to the large 1.5 kilowatt spindle I used on my machine, in use it has proven to be more than enough power for jobs like this, and I'd even say it probably has a bit more torque in the lower RPM ranges than on my old machine, making it better suited for materials that don't appreciate fast spinning tools. My only gripe so far is that I'd love to see some extra options added for the manual edge finder, as it would be beneficial to be able to sense any corner of your workpiece rather than only the lower left corner. That said though, this is a great little machine and would be a fantastic starting point for someone that's looking to get into CNC as a hobby. That's it for this one. I'll be back next month with a new project for you all, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.